Hello and welcome back to Tracking Trends. By now, you must have guessed what we are going to talk about today. As most of us were asleep, US President Donald Trump fired yet another salvo. H1B visas will now cost a hopping $100,000. Currently, anyone who wants to go to the United States with an H1B visa has to pay roughly about $1,000. 215 or so as application fee, another 750 the company that wants to sponsor him or her, and then a few $100 on other things. Now that goes up to $100,000. For Indians, it means almost a crore. Now that's something analysts are saying is as good as killing the H1B visa program. We had planned to focus this show on the latest state of play relating to Trump tariffs and what's happening to the India US deal. But as things would pan out, now we have to now get into that topic. We will do so in the course of it. But first, we need to take up what the morning headlines mean. And to do that, with me today, I have a very special guest in our studio, Mr. Ajay Shankar. Mr. Shankar is a man with a very rich and varied experience. In 45 years that he has been in public service, there's almost no sector that he has not been engaged with. A member of the Indian Administrative Service, IAS, he retired as the Secretary of Department of Industrial Promotion and Policy in 2009. He played a key role in putting together the stimulus package during the global financial crisis of 2008. He has been he has been the chairman of the National Productivity Council, the Quality Council of India. He has worked in fields of power development, urban development, environment and forests. He was also the member secretary of the National Manufacturing Competitive Council from 2011 to 2014. Currently, among many other hats that he wears, he is engaged in a lot of academic work as a member of the board of Institute of Studies in Industrial Development, a New Delhi-based think tank. Mr. Shankar, welcome to our show. Let's straight go to the topic. Instead of me doing the explaining of what has happened overnight and what does it mean and how does it completely change the contours and the color of the ongoing India-US trade negotiation. Donald Trump's announcement of a 100K H1B visa fee. What do you make of it?
First of all, President Trump, in this case, has acted in the manner in which he's been acting since January, which is that he's finding clever ways of bypassing or circumventing the requirements of the US system. So the H1B visa program has congressional approval. So he could not end the H1B visa program, but by imposing this $100,000 fee, he has effectively killed it. There is no way we can assume that the H1B visa program is still open. So he's effectively used his executive authority to close a program which otherwise have needed congressional approval. So this is in keeping with the series of executive orders that he's been issuing. He's used an emergency law long forgotten to impose the tariffs and wage the tariff blows or tariff wars to get the deals he wants. So he's effectively been weaponizing trade policy and tariffs to achieve his political ends. Now, what he has done is, at one level, in keeping with his election promise of ending immigration. So H1B visa was a route to immigration. You stayed there, you worked, you got a green card and became a US citizen. So with this, that door is firmly shut. Now, one thing which I don't think he recognizes or his MAGA supporters recognize, that the H1B program and the program and other programs by which the brightest students from the world went to the US, worked in their universities, worked in high tech firms, was a resource which allowed the US to maintain its technological leadership in the world. So if one looks back, late 80s, Japan and Germany were almost catching up with the US in technology. Now, the only thing which gave US this decisive lead in the subsequent 2, 3 decades has been the inflow of the best talent from the world. India, China, Korea, and other countries. So by this one decision, he has stopped the ability of the frontier technology firms in the US as well as the US universities in being able to compete with the Chinese and maintain their leadership. Because the fact of the matter today is that in high technology, US is being challenged not by Europe, not by Japan, but by China. And with this one step, certainly gives China a decisive advantage in the race that is going to unfold in the years ahead. Now, as far as India is concerned, the Indians who are hoping to get the H1B visa, get a green card, and live in the US, this door is shut. But if I look with a little bit of, broader perspective, the Indian firms which are doing business in the US have over the years learned to work from within India and maintain their cost competitiveness, and their dependence on H1B visas has been declining. So I don't see them suffering a shock. Yes, there will be a cost disadvantage, there will be pain, but in my view, it will be quite manageable. So they're not going to get hurt badly. It's the US economy and the US companies which will get hurt badly. The second perspective is that India has evolved considerably over the last 10, 15 years. So almost all global firms have centers in India where they do technology development, R&D, design, etc. And that adds to their global competitiveness. Now, what India has also achieved in the last, I think, 6, 7, 8 years, is in creating a very dynamic, vibrant startup ecosystem. So many of these bright people who are working in these frontier technology areas get tempted to start their own company. So if one were to say that after the Silicon Valley, the most vibrant, dynamic startup ecosystem or culture is in India, especially in the Bangalore area, one would not be overstating or over describing what has been achieved. So I think that part of the economy, which is really our future, will get an added strength from this decision. Because you see where the bright young, talent who did engineering education in India went. So my generation, anybody who was bright went to the US. A little fast forward another 8, 10 years, lots of bright people came into the IS, they're retiring as secretaries to government. Then many bright people went and did MBA and served Indian companies in non-technical roles. They served well, but smart people, so finance, marketing, sales. But in hardcore technology, the space for their creative talent has now emerged for young Indians. And I see this as helping us, not decisively, but at the margins, in getting more and more Indians to do cutting edge technology work in India and leading to the creation of wealth in India and jobs in India. So that's how I look at it.
I mean, that's a very optimistic note that you're trying to strike. Uh, let's just, for the benefit of our audience, let me just recap that. In 1990, the US Congress brought this law to enable H1B visa, which were primarily aimed at highly skilled labor. Technologists, doctors, engineers, scientists, because the US was short on this talent and it thought the only way it can have a competitive edge over competitors like Japan and Germany, China was nowhere there on the horizon then, was by encouraging talent from countries like India and China and several others to come to its shores. Now, as things would in the later years, things would develop. Uh, Indians in the last 2 decades emerged as the largest customers of this H1B visa. In between 2020 to 2024, 72% of H1B visas were issued to Indians, and most of these went to IT workers. And incidentally, of the top 10 companies engaging these H1B visa holders, I think 6 were Americans, and only a couple or more were Indian companies. So, as Mr. Shankar said, that the H1B visa coming under some kind of a shadow at some point in time has been with Indian IT companies for the last few years. In fact, ever since Donald Trump assumed his first presidency, and Indian companies have been working to cut down on their dependency. So it won't hurt them as much as it would have hurt them had it been 7 to 8 years back. But having said that, it would nevertheless hurt them. And we saw that overnight NASDAQ responded to the announcement in the following manner. The Indian IT companies, Infosys and Wipro ADRs, went down by almost 4%, whereas the American tech companies' stock prices, most of them, they rose, underscoring the fact that investors tend to bet on companies that are going for research and innovation led growth and not companies which are leaning more on ways arbitrage. Now, so that's just kind of bringing in, because I know in the days people will argue, try to quantify the impact on individual companies, individual sectors in India. But the bigger question, Mr. Shankar, is now I want to segue into the larger issue of what is happening between India and the US. Now, the Assistant Secretary USTR was here this week, and just 2 days ago, after the talks got over, the Indian government gave a statement that there were many positive developments during the meeting, and that there were indications that the Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal will head to Washington DC next week to resume negotiations on the trade deal. So there was a kind of a sense of relief that, okay, there's a thaw, including Donald Trump wishing Prime Minister Modi on his birthday, that there is a thaw between the two leaders, there is a thaw between the two negotiating sides, and we could now hope for some progress in the trade deal. And then here comes this announcement, which kind of is likely to be seen as a big setback. Now, and this is what has happened just a month ago, when we were around the end of July, when we were thinking that we are almost nearing a deal, and then US President announces 25% tariff, and then within 4 days he announces another penal tariff of 25%. So, is the US really interested in a deal, or is it doing things to squeeze more out of India, which India has so far not been able to concede?
First of all, I'd like to say that the present US is being run, if I were to overstate it or be a little dramatic, as a medieval monarchy with a somewhat whimsical monarch. So to expect consistency may be a bit unrealistic, or to expect a rational pattern may also be unrealistic. Now, having said that, I see two ways in which one can try and make sense of what has happened in the last 24 hours and also in the last month or so. So, to be charitable, one could take the view that President Trump has taken this decision not to hurt India, but to just close the doors to all immigration, which is an election promise of his and for which there is a very strong constituency. So maybe this decision has nothing to do with India in his mind. But irrespective of which way one takes a call on this decision, the fact of the matter is that after being very harsh with us in the public domain, the US has taken the first steps to begin re-engagement, and the talks, by all accounts, have been constructive. But it would be rational to expect the US to try and get as many concessions out of us as possible. In any negotiation, that's a rational approach, and in this case, it is more so, given the fact that they've hurt us very badly with this 25% plus 25% tariff. The rhetoric has been very sharp at times. I mean, almost, unacceptable.
Rude.
I mean, I'm shying away from using strong words. But nevertheless, I think within the US, at least in President Trump's mind, it appears that there is some merit and advantage in re-establishing the close ties that we had, but on terms which are the most favorable to the US and to Trump. I mean, he prides himself on striking hard bargains in the art of the deal. So I would take the very harsh rhetoric coming from some US quarters as intended to intimidate us and to make us agree to concessions which we may not have been willing to grant earlier. So, from a national perspective, I would like to believe that our ideal course of action would be to ignore the rhetoric, keep working constructively in the negotiations to get a deal which is win-win for both sides, but not act on the premise that we can't bear the pain which the US is inflicting upon us. So the negotiating position has to be, we can live with pain, we are a poor country, we can live with whatever pain you want to inflict on us. But we will not compromise on fundamentals or on self-respect, and we will certainly not become an ally who will carry out your orders within 24 hours.
That's a very important thing you said, that if we really want gain in the, if we really want to aim for some long-term gain, we must be prepared for some pain now. And it's inevitable, right?
No, I would like to argue that it is not inevitable. Hopefully, it will be short term, hopefully, it will be longer term. Because the fact of the matter is that the US also gains with this relationship. It gains geopolitically, it gains economically. And we tend to, I think, underestimate our economic leverage. We do see our strategic leverage, balancing towards China, etc. But on the economic side, we don't recognize the leverage we have. Of course, we are nowhere near China. We don't have any of that kind of leverage. But it's not that we are without leverage. And where does that leverage come from? Our market size is not insignificant today.
Right.
I mean, I'm not one of those who will go around saying that we are now becoming the largest or third largest economy in real terms. We are not. Our per capita income and other things are modest. But given our population, the size of our market is large enough for most global companies. And the second thing is that if you look at 10, 15, 20 years, in many, many large segments, the maximum growth and demand will take place in India. Because we are underdeveloped. I mean, Europe, Japan, US are all mature economies. Now, we have not yet felt the need to think of using the size of a market for leverage. We've not felt the need, but the way the world is moving towards mercantilism and how the US is weaponizing trade and tariff, I think it's time we started thinking about the size of our market and how we could leverage it. And the other, in my view, bigger leverage we have is our young creative talent, young creative technical talent, cutting edge talent, which are being innovative every day. So these are two huge assets we have. And therefore, when we think of short-term pain or whether we can afford to stand up or be firm, I think we need to be patient and we need to recognize these two enormous strengths that we have. We are aware of it, we are conscious of it, but we have not thought about it in ways in which to use these for our
Have
strategic
a
goals.
strategy around it.
Yeah, yeah.
You don't
That's what
seem
I'm
to have
trying
a
to say.
strategy around it.
Yeah.
So now, having done, what he has done with the proclamation of today about H1B visa, essentially, Trump has opened up another channel to put pressure on India. Right now, we were only dealing through the channel for goods, trading merchandise trade. Now the services angle has been opened up, and it may not just stop with H1B visa. It may also extend to other areas as well. Now, how do we deal with this situation?
My view is somewhat simplistic, which is that President Trump and his team have to recognize by the resolve we can show that we cannot be bullied, we will not capitulate. Then, in good faith, we are prepared to negotiate as we are negotiating and see how we can arrive at a win win situation, which is good for both sides. So far, all that has happened is that we've been punished. While the talks have been going on, we've been punished and published publicly, and we've received very strong rhetoric.
Yeah.
But I think we need not react to that. We continue to be patient and negotiate. But we need to convey very clearly to President Trump and his team, and he has to discover, as some of his predecessors in previous decades have discovered, that India cannot be bullied and will not go on its knees and capitulate.
Let
So
let me. I mean, I get.
once that is accepted by the US side, then we have been very good strategic partners for the last 25, 30 years. We can go back to being very good strategic partners with both sides gaining. Because the US will gain nothing out of it. We certainly are suffering.
No, I get what you're saying, that we need to be resolute and we need to be patient. Uh, uh, but it so seems that somewhere the perception is that we are vulnerable. Somewhere the perception is that we are vulnerable and we can be bullied. Uh,
Which
and
is why the effort to bully us is ongoing. So the
yeah,
moment the recognition comes that we are willing to live with pain, but we will not capitulate, then I think the negotiating strategy will
but
change.
will that be enough? Because uh, I mean, would I be off the mark if I say some people get this sense that we are seen as vulnerable and we are seen as a nation that can be bullied easily because where we are today economically, we are domestically quite vulnerable. We are not doing as well as it is made out to be. I mean, does that give others some leverage?
I would try and put it in a slightly larger perspective. So, first of all, is our ability to bear the pain that has been inflicted. The pain is real, it's quite substantial.
Yeah.
25% of the exports of our goods have been impacted by these tariffs. So, clearly, the pain is there. The expectation on the other side would be that because of that, we'll go on our knees. We haven't done it, and I hope we have the stamina to not go on our knees. That the talks have started and there is expectation of good progress on both sides is a good sign, and I'd like to take that seriously. And I'd like to believe that the negotiations will and should move well because both sides gain. And we need not feel that vulnerable because as an economy, we have challenges. We have enormous challenges, and we have to come to terms with them. We have to find the right solutions and so on and so forth. But I don't think the shock that is being inflicted on us by the US is one which we can't live with. I mean, just to take us back in time, we had the severest lockdown in the world for a very long period.
Yeah.
The negative shock of that on our economy is enormous. We had negative real growth.
Yeah.
But we bounced back and we are none the worse off for it. So we can live with this, with the pain that US has inflicted or may choose to inflict. And I repeat, we suffer the more, but the US also ends up paying a price. And what the US does not seem to recognize and what they do need to recognize is that there's enormous goodwill for the US and the people of India. Beyond the point, it will turn into a kind of animosity, which then emotional animosity don't go easily once they get deep rooted.
Yeah. Now let me. We also weathered the sanctions in 1998 when we tested the bomb. Uh, so let's say that what your hopes come true, that we manage to
No, no,
see through.
let me add one more point here, which is that one of the good things President Trump is trying to do is to end the war in Ukraine.
Mhm,
And I don't see that war now going on for another 3-4 years.
mhm,
He says he thought he'll end it in one day. It's turning out to be far more difficult. But till date, he's very clear that he wants that war to end.
mhm.
And when that war ends, then the whole rationale behind that additional 25% disappears,
Of course.
irrespective of what happens in our trade talks.
Yeah.
So that will be a positive development, and in many other geopolitical, considerations, for India it is very good because otherwise India keeps getting, buffeted between are you with us, are you against us.
Right.
So if that war ends, I think President Trump will have done a positive service to his country, to Europe, to the world, and
Mm.
certainly we will be beneficiaries.
Yesterday, we were at the seminar, and you said something that I picked. You said that we are also at an inflection point when we have to revisit many of our fundamental issues, and you also said success has to begin with success at home. And you were trying to imply that while all these things go on, we need to kind of look inside and fix a lot of things which we have kind of ignored. So if this entire Trump episode has, if there are certain lessons to learn, if there is an opportunity to seize in the adversity, how do we kind of, I'm taking you away from India US thing. I'm talking about what's happening with domestic industry, with our own economy, economic resilience. Oh, could you share your thoughts on that count?
Uh, I would put
Because
it
we are
like
also
this.
losing market share at home also to others.
So that's where I would like to begin with, that we have a few related problems, and all of them relate to our mindset and the way we look at things. So the first is the short-term problem, which is there is a measure of complacency that we are doing very well, we are the fastest growing large economy, we are whatever third, fourth largest, etc., etc. So there is a sense of complacency that we are on a good trip or a good success journey. Now that is, in my view, a bit of a handicap because it makes you intellectually lazy. You don't want to think hard. The other is the inherited legacy mindsets. So the first one, which I had referred to yesterday, and I'll repeat again, and that is very important, is that we have believed pre-liberalization and post-liberalization in the elite, excluding economists, that a strong currency means a strong economy, depreciation means weakening of the economy, and political mismanagement of the economy. Now, that's a complete fallacy. What matters in the economic world is the real exchange rate, which is the difference between the formal rate and the change in the difference in the inflation rates with our partners. So if our partner has say 6%, we have 6% inflation, he has 2% inflation, the real exchange rate appreciation is 4%. So as I mentioned yesterday, that from 2000, I think, 15 to now, according to RBI, there has been an 8% real exchange rate appreciation. According to an international source which tracks this, it was about 18% in 2005. So
Much more than the
effectively,
RBI's estimate.
that's a shorter period of time. That's from 2005. The same. So the estimates don't contradict each other, only the time period is different. So if I go back to 2005, we have had 18% depreciation, real exchange rate appreciation. which means lowering of import duties by 18%, which means most import duties are in negative territory. Now, we don't seem to pay attention to this. So whenever there is a problem, we say, okay, some firm comes, anti-dumping duty, some import duty, and Trump calls us tariff king. Now, if we were to just maintain the real exchange rate, a lot of the problems that our industry is facing, or manufacturing in particular, would come down. Now, if I look at the East Asian success stories, they all chose to keep the currency artificially low when they had this 8-10% growth rates and export-led growth. Now, I'm not arguing for artificially depreciating currency because it's unfair trade practice in my view, and as a country, we don't believe in doing unfair things. And also, the external environment will not permit it. And nor should we want to attract US attention or anybody's attention that we are manipulating the currency to gain any advantage. But nobody can argue that you should not maintain the real exchange rate, because that's only undoing the disadvantage due to higher inflation. And we are trying to get our inflation down. So that's number one. The second is that we have had this, division between Commerce Ministry and exports and industry. And we have till now not got into the habit of taking a holistic view of the domestic market as well as the export market. And we need to do that. And if you look at any other great successful industrial power, the first success that firms achieve is in the domestic market. Once you become strong in your domestic market, you go out and sell. And once you are strong in your domestic market and competitive, you also have the confidence and the energy to go out and sell in foreign markets. Now, we don't have a coherent way of thinking and strategizing as to how we will succeed in the domestic market and then succeed in global markets. So if I go to the market as a consumer, I find it very difficult to buy anything made in India. And that's the case across India. I mean even political leaders have talked about our Ganesh Murtis coming from somewhere, or so on and so forth. So we have to think hard of how to strategize and increase domestic value addition, increase domestic jobs, increase market share in the domestic market for goods made in India, for value addition in India, and then look outwards. But that's a very, very new way of thinking, which is required in substance and in concrete terms, because we are very good again as a people in enunciating high principles and policy goals. But the nuts and bolts bit, we are a bit weak, and that's what leads to real success. I mean,
So what you are saying?
Yeah, please.
Yes, right. No, I'm saying, if I'm getting you right, what you're saying, the success of your trade policy is tied to what kind of industrial policy you are pursuing in ways more than one, and vice versa. And that you need to, both your industrial policy and your trade policy have to go hand in hand.
In fact, I'd say there have to be one policy. I mean, one strategy, you can give it different names, but it has to be one coherent way of looking at things. And to just illustrate a little one bit of example, which I made the point yesterday, that there is no way you can be competitive in manufacturing if you don't address the costs of manufacturing and doing business in India. Now, in the political economy of India, till date, and therefore the costs for the producer and taking the hard decisions to lowering the cost for the producer are not yet on the table. They're not under serious consideration. And similarly, there are other traditions that have evolved where we believe the market is very good and we need not intervene in the market. And therefore, we are unable to think of the state assuming a greater responsibility in the domestic market and the external market. I'm using the phrase deliberately. We have to compete successfully in producing in India for the domestic market, which we are not doing. So that's a whole change in mindset that I'm suggesting.
Responding to consumers' interests means you votes. Responding to producers' interests.
I don't agree. I don't agree, because if you respond to the producer's interest, you'd be creating far more jobs in the country. If the whole political crisis on job creation, the whole demand for reservations would all wither away if the economy was creating enough jobs and high value paying jobs. So I think it's an advantage in supporting the consumer over the producer. But you can balance both.
What I meant was it is
completely at the cost of the other. I mean, in politics, you have to balance and you have to do what is feasible and practical. But this perception that helping the producer and job creation is politically counterproductive, is not going to yield political returns, I think is a mistake.
No, I think we have covered a lot of ground, and I think if policymakers in the present regime are watching this, I think you have given them a lot of food for thought. I mean, if I may summarize, you are of the view that this too shall pass. We just have to be resolute, patient. There may be some short-term pain, but if we can hold on to it, if we can demonstrate some nerves of steel, we may come out of it shining bright. But while that is there on one side, we should not be taking eyes of some very fundamental issues and concerns that's plaguing our economy, our the large, longer term interest of our own people, and which is what you have outlined, that we need to do a very 360-degree kind of appraisal and have a very new, radical, fresh approach to looking at things and fixing them on a war footing. Thank you so very much.
Thank you also for giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts.
It was a pleasure talking to you. And to our audience, my appeal once again, if you have liked the show, share it, subscribe to our channel, and keep coming back to us. Thank you, Mr. Shankar.